Welcome to the Soul Gym Podcast, where each week we explore the connection of mind, body, and spirit towards soulful living. I'm your host, Reverend Daryl Jones. It is my joy and honor to be with you on this journey. Let's get into the practice. Hello, and welcome back to the Soul Gym Podcast. My name is Reverend Daryl Jones, and I'm so excited to be sharing these conversations with you. I have today my friend, my buddy, Edward Grochowiak, and we are going to get into some conversations, some shenanigans, whatever you may want to call it. Eddie and I go back a number of years. We first met at a meditation studio here in Chicago, and we just kind of like would have conversations all the time about meditation, but then it spilled into larger things of life. We realized we had some similarities and some connections. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. He went to the University of Dayton. So just in terms of knowing the community there, both of our fathers have passed away. Just in terms of dealing and healing and grieving, and that we've had that as a common connection. And I really am excited to have him on the Soul Gym Podcast today. And I'm just going to let him say hello, tell a little bit more about himself, and then we'll get into our convo today. Eddie, what does the world need to know about you and who you are and what you do?
Thanks, Daryl. Edward Grochowiak, born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, in the Bucktown neighborhood. My biggest project right now is myself. Outside of my work as a professional sports agent and a professional realtor as well. Those are my two careers. But my biggest career is, like I said, working on myself. And I feel like so much of the work that we've been involved in, Daryl, here and, in different facets has really helped me hone in on that I am my biggest project. And it's a continual assignment that changes over time, depending on where I'm at in my life and where I find myself in the world. So, of course, this chapter is very different than 10 years ago when I started this work. For me, it's about understanding myself deeper, where then I can help others explore their own personal experience of their life. And for those that know me, I work with a lot of different people. That's my life's work, is helping others along. And the more that I could show up for myself, the better able I am to show up for those around me, be it my family, my friends, my clients, and really just always trying to dig deeper into where I'm at and dig deeper into my personal practice to understand that we're all a little broken and that that's okay.
I love that. Thank you. But man, you're already dropping some jewels for all of us to walk away with. I'm like, wow, I don't know if I would have said, the latest and greatest project that I'm always working on is myself. That's such a beautiful, not just sentiment, that's a beautiful, point of view, to step into life. And to your point, so many different traditions always say that, you've got to work on this here in order to be of service out there. And I know you are a man of service, that you like to contribute to the community, to the people you work with, to the people you work for. And I'm grateful to have you on the podcast and continue sharing and pouring into the Soul Gym audience here.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, to go off that, I think, the work that one does with themselves is so important, though we have been told it's these other things, right? I think we've been told, if it's from familial or society or school, like you go to school, you get a job, you work 30, 25 years at that job, you have kids, you do that over and over, instead of saying, well, what are you doing for yourself? So I think for me, it's like a configuration of my own life of, it's not about the success. It's not about the money. It's not about those things, even though that's all so tied into who we are. It's how we've been
Mhm,
programmed. For me, it's
mhm,
been trying to unravel that and understand that those things speak to my ego. They don't speak to my heart. They don't speak to my soul. And trying to understand, where I'm at in my life now, what really matters instead of what I was told should matter, because what should have mattered just doesn't quench my thirst, my appetite, as much as what I'm now trying to go after in my experience, which is a deeper connection with myself and then those around me.
mhm. So maybe I'm not going to read from the book. I just want to get into it. Basically, the last chapter of the book is about like, well, who is a soul gym practitioner, and the whole setup of the chapter is that it's not a certain type of person, and that's the reason that I'm doing these interviews. I really want people to hear other people's stories, because I think in most stories we find something of our own story, whether it is hardship or success, or maybe just the personal struggles that we have with ourselves. So I want to go back to something that you said, Ed, about kind of the different stages and phases and maybe seasons of our life, right? And um, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you alluded to the fact that maybe there was a season where it was more egoically driven. It was like, I got to get this money, I got to look this certain way, I got to have X X X X X. Um, and not that those things aren't important. We're all always trying to, have the comforts that we want in our life. But I hear that there's something that might be superseding that for you. What is what is the gauge for you? Like the language that I always use is like connection, like soul connection. When I'm connected to my soul and I'm fully like body, mind, spirit present, then I feel a sense of safety in my body. I feel a sense of okayness in my own skin, regardless of the judgments that I may have about it, in terms of like, oh, I need to lose the 20 pounds or whatever it may be. I still feel okay with where I am in terms of, um, financial desires or any other thing else. It's not that I don't have those desires and wants, but I'm really in a sense of okayness in the moment with where I am, and realizing that there isn't an emergency taking place. I may have lots of worries, but there actually isn't a tiger in the room about to attack me. So there's this, when I really feel connected to my soul, I feel a sense of calm and presence where I am with who I am. And so that's how I define soul connection, or this, at least this phase in my life. What does that mean for you? Like, when, first off, what would you say is the stage or phase of life that you're in? Like, what's the priority for you? What is, when you wake up in the morning, it's like, yeah, I got to do these things on my calendar, but what else are you doing to care for you so you can do all those things on your
Yeah, I think during the pandemic, especially with both of my careers, I could work sun up to sundown, and I did. I
calendar?
remember from like April of 2020 to probably March of 2021, it was like sun up to sundown. This is just what I do. And I
Mm,
just felt myself being depleted, being burned out. And I was like, I need a morning routine. And a lot of that came from my coaches around me, those that I love, my sister, saying, you can't keep doing this the way that you're doing it. Yeah, you're successful. Yeah, you're getting things done, but like, what are you losing in exchange for that?
mm,
So, if you just think about like a morning, like I wake up and because I am one person who, if I'm anything, I'm addicted to my phone. And that's
mm,
something that I've always, or recently, I've really started kind of being curious about that. literally my brain is like, go check your emails, go check your text messages and clean them out, respond back, delete the emails. Because for me, it's like, I need to clean that to feel like,
Yeah.
but I think was it Denzel Washington or somebody recently just said, try to spend that first 20 or 25 minutes, not like this. Because once you jump
Mm,
into this, your day's over.
right.
You're
It's hard to
always
jump
going to
out.
serve everybody else. And it's
Yeah.
like, how are you serving yourself? So for me, it's what are two things that I'm grateful for? And what are two things that I'm looking forward to?
Mm,
Again, I'm not a big journaler. I think I need to maybe do some more of that. But for me, it's like in my brain. So if it's like I woke up in a warm house that has a roof over it, especially in the middle of December, that's a positive thing, right?
yeah.
Or my mom is healthy, my sister is healthy. Those are things that are like, okay, those are easy wins.
Right.
That if we can just prompt ourselves, we then start off on a positive note before somebody blows us up in an email and tells us this, that, and the other, or calls us and dumps their trauma on us. Right.
Mm,
And then also, what are two things I'm looking forward to today? I'm looking forward to taking the dogs out for a walk. I'm looking forward to that mindfulness sit that I'm going to do. I'm looking forward to my workout at the gym. So then it's something that we can, hope for. Um,
yeah.
that. And then if I can, and it doesn't happen every day, it's like I try to get to my living room and sit on my meditation cushion. And this
Yeah.
is 12, 13 years in the making of, oh, it doesn't need to be a certain way. It doesn't need to be for 30 minutes. It could be for 2 minutes, but I'm doing this for myself.
Yeah.
And then a little prayer as well. It's something that I've always incorporated. Growing up, I always prayed at night.
Mm,
It's a good way to, you know, take hold of the day, but it's like, let me just pray a little bit in the morning. Now, if I can
yeah.
start those three-way things, but again, there's days that I don't get there, right? But when I have my gratitude practice, when I sit for a few minutes, when I have a prayer, the load of those days is lighter than
Mm,
when I don't do those. Um, and when I am super busy and things are going well and I'm all over the place, I tend to forget about that. And then it's like the crash and burn of the burnout to be like, I need to get back to it. And the kind
yeah.
of, reminder that it's a practice. It'll never be perfect. The real joy and the gold in it is just the process of doing it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at. And again, like wasn't like that last year, it wasn't like that 5 years ago. Um, but it's a way that I could fill my cup up before I go out into the professional world, personal world,
Mm,
and inevitably interact with something that's going to trigger me.
right.
I have a
Right.
little bit more um, compassion for myself and others when I'm able to do that.
Yeah. That's awesome. So can we, just because my intention is I really want people to like just get pictures of how other people care for themselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you say like, okay, it'd be nice if you can go sit on the cushion, are you like literally just waking up and before you go to the bathroom, you're like, what are two things I'm grateful for? Or are you like doing it more formally? You take a shower or you're doing it in the shower or just whenever you remember, like what does it look like?
I mean, I think I'm kind of in a slumber when I wake up and I'm trying to do it right then and there, you know,
Okay.
because if when I'm in the shower, I'm thinking of, I got to follow up with this person. I got to do this. I got to like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
already too late.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do it as quickly as I can to get off into that start. But again, sometimes things happen, right? And again, it's like, even if it's an hour into the day, come back and just say, I'm going to take note of this
Mm,
because it's not always going to be this way, right? Like my mom's not always going to be alive. Business isn't always going to be flourishing. I will not always be healthy. So to
Mhm.
take stock of that now to say, wow, I'm really blessed, really lucky because, I know the other side. You
Yeah.
know, I'm celebrating the 11th year anniversary at the end of this month of my dad passing away. Like, I remember feeling completely in a free fall in my life. Um, and waking up and saying, is this the day he's gonna die? Where now I have the moment to say, well, yeah, like he did die and he's not here in the physical, right? But he is here in the spiritual, in the what I always just say is like the vibes, like he is still here.
Yeah.
So when things are good, it's a great time to practice it. You
Yeah.
know, I think unfortunately so much of us get pulled into this work when things are not good. And that's okay.
Yeah.
However you come to the work of your life is how you come to it, and to not demonize oneself, but to say, okay, now knowing what I know, where am I going?
Yeah.
And again, if it happens in the shower, that's okay. If it happens after night, it's okay. If it happens, it's the only thing that really matters. Um,
Right.
and everybody's experience is going to be a little different.
One of my it's been a really hard practice actually. Um my intention for this year, and it's bumping it over to 2025 too, because I did not do it very well,
That's
is
okay.
I literally want the first word that I consciously speak or kind of say in my own head to be the word God.
Ooh,
Like just God, that's it, and then I can go on. But it's like I mean, imagine, at least for me, maybe the word God doesn't work for everyone. It could be love, it could be spirit, but like whatever word that one associates with like a higher power, like if that was the first acknowledgement, that's my continued goal for 2025. It's like if I can, if literally put God first by saying that's the word, um to start the day with, I think that could be really cool. um but you mentioned something about about how people come into this work, and one of my mentors, Michael Beckwith, who has this whole, one of the exercises in the book that I highlight called visioning. He always says that pain pushes us into what we need to do until a vision pulls us forward. Um, and some of the scriptural reference that comes up is that where there is no vision, the people will perish. And I find we try to spend so much time and energy avoiding pain and avoiding suffering, and not that I'm like, ooh, everyone should suffer, everyone needs pain. However, it is, I think, the most powerful catalyst for growth and change in our life. And I think there's such a business on some level of trying to avoid the pain in our lives. um, just for anyone listening that's going through some pain, to know that maybe this is the moment or the season of your life where you're being invited into a new relationship with your own soul. Because I know for me, what pushed me into this work was divorce. I mean, it sucked. I was young. I got kind of like, I don't want to say blindsided, but I just wasn't, it was shocking to me that that's where my life was headed. And I was just like, something's got to give here. And I couldn't change anything about my ex-wife in terms of where she was and what she wanted. But I realized, oh, damn, Daryl, you got to do some work, homie. Like, you got to read some books. You need to do some practices. You need to like do all the things. Um, and I was just talking to someone about this the other night. I'm like, I was speaking at a spiritual community that I probably never would have found my path to had I not, oh gosh, over 20 years ago, gone through the pain of divorce that pushed me. that pain pushed me into a very powerful relationship with myself that I hadn't had up to that point. Um, so tell me a little bit more about, for you, when it comes to, it's such an overused term, work-life balance. I'm not interested in talking about a perfect balance point because I don't think it exists, or it's not something that we stay at very long. So you don't have one business, you've got multiple businesses. And you alluded to it a little bit before. It'd be easy for you to work sun up to sundown. What is the biggest thing that helps you? The word that's coming to my mind is stay grounded in the midst of that pull and the seduction of, there's always another email, there's always another follow up with the client, there's always, something else that I can do, another thing I can do on social media. What grounds you the most and pulls you back into yourself?
I'm going to get to that, but I kind of
Okay.
want to go back to what you were talking about previous, is these things that happen and then we're kind of
Mm,
pushed into it. If it's death, if it's a divorce, if it's something happened, us humans do not like change. Or I will just talk about my own experience. I do not like change, right? So when my father passed away, that represented a huge change. And,
mm,
I truly believe that my brain forever was altered and a part of me died with him. Like
mm,
that part of me changed forever. And then it's like, what are you going to do? You know? And change is just so, so hard. And it really shows itself to us in very different ways. The divorce, the passing of someone you love, the loss of a huge opportunity that you waited your whole life for. Like with
mm.
some of my basketball clients, they want to be guys that play in the NBA. And when
Right.
you have your whole life pointed towards that, and it is your identity, and that doesn't happen, how crushing that is, because your life now
Wow.
will change from what you thought it was going to be.
Mm,
And through my practice in therapy and mindfulness and understanding myself, I used to be embarrassed personally and shameful that in my head, I knew that my father dying was the worst thing that could happen to me. And in the same instance, the best thing that ever
mhm.
happened to me. And I had a hard time understanding the polarity of that,
Yeah.
because that is what brought me closer to where I was supposed to be. And that put me on the path of where I'm at. And, I don't get to have these conversations in the here and now with him, but like I have conversations with him um, in in thought. And,
Yeah.
I hear these stories of his father died when he was 20. My father was 20 when my grandfather died. And that then held my dad going to Vietnam, held him out of the
Mm,
draft because of the rules. And because he didn't go to Vietnam, he was in Chicago and he met my mom. And
mm.
like, if not for my grandfather dying, my dad probably would have died in Vietnam with even before meeting my mom, and I wouldn't be here. And like
Right.
that instance of what my father went through, like led him to inevitably his life with children and friends and um, a legendary remembrance of who he was. So for me, it's like,
Mm,
yes, this is tough, but like this is bringing me to my actual realization of like what I was here for. And I
mm,
really believe all of these things happen for a reason. And it's okay to say, yeah, like this is a horrific thing happening to me. But in the same instance, like this is a beautiful thing happening to me. And I think that's very hard for us to understand. And only with time and space away from the event and then to where we will be was I able to understand that. So I wanted to at least cap that, 'cause
Yeah.
you were saying that for me was like, oh yes, this was my experience.
Yeah.
And again, the trauma of being a human being has our ego thinking that it's shameful to think this way. It has our ego thinking we should be embarrassed to say, yes, he died. Yes, she left me. And that was horrific. But that was what I needed in my life. Um,
Yeah.
and that's the beauty of this experience, I think. In terms of what grounds me, like what really comes to mind is my mentors,
Mm.
people who I go to. If it's, Dr. Peter Teitelbaum from the University of Dayton, who is my professional career mentor, who was my professor of sport management at Dayton, calling him in 2021 and saying, I'm doing really well. I'm making money. I'm doing these things. And he's like, but what are you doing for yourself?
Mm.
And where are your happy places? And how do we spend more time in the happy places? Because your happy place isn't having a guy in the NBA, even though you told yourself that. Your happy
Mm.
place isn't selling X amount of homes, even though you told yourself that. Or if it's, going to my sister, who is my best friend and one of the guides of my life, the reason why I know you, helping understand, can we just sit here and not feel like we need to do something? Because the
Mm.
way that we were indoctrinated in our house was, if you're not doing something, what are you doing? To just say, I
Right.
could just be,
Mm.
and talking to Megan before I came on here, she was like, you and Daryl have such a special relationship. I'm glad that you're able to get on the podcast. And then it made me think, from talking to her, I need to be spending more time with Daryl. Like Daryl was you were a huge help during the pandemic. It was like
Mm.
nobody was doing anything. We were having our chats. And then like as things get easier and life gets on, it's like, oh, you forget about those grounding things, but it's like, oh, I need to
Yeah.
hit Daryl 4 times a year now, because you are one of my mentors, especially in the spiritual space.
Mm.
So for me, it's going to others with my problems, which I do not like doing. I have a
Yeah.
hard time asking for help,
Yeah.
and saying I am dealing, and then listening to let other people break your head open and say, well, life is actually really good. But if you just take this perspective and just change it from here and start keeping score on all the things you are blessed with, maybe things will get better. So for me, it's going to those people, who I trust, who I love, and saying, I'm not feeling great. And then they can share that stuff, because then I'm like, oh, yeah, wait, like it's not as bad. Because, like, up here, it is always
Right.
much, much worse than it is
Yeah.
actually out here.
Yeah. I was it's interesting. There's like I love that you use the word mentor. There's at least in my mind, there are mentors that are like living people that I like can pick up the phone or email and connect with. But then there's so many other mentors that I have that I've never met.
Yeah.
Some of them that were dead before I was born.
Marcus
Um,
Aurelius for me.
right? Um, and but it's powerful, I think, to think about those resources, those mentors, as mentors, almost to the point of how you were talking with your father. I do the same thing with my dad. He's one of my mentors, and though he's not physically here anymore, I mean, I cannot tell you how often he is still guiding me with the challenges of my life, and not even just the challenges. Sometimes I still get to celebrate some things with him, even though it's not like I get to give him a hug or a high five around it. But what if, whether it's an author that someone really vibes with, or maybe there's another podcast or some other talk show or something that people get fed by, and they may never ever meet that person, but you can still have a relationship with the wisdom that they offer. And to me, that is, I mean, for me, everything's a spiritual practice. But it really can be a powerful, whether you want to call it spiritual or not. I think it's a powerful practice to be in, uh, to be in dialogue with something or someone. I mean, I've even done it with things before. Like, I'm a big lover of nature, and there's been times when I've sat by water and I was like, "Water, tell me what to do." Like, give me some sort of something here. And then all of a sudden I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I realized, wow, the water's just moving with what's happening. Daryl, go with the flow. You're being too tight. And I literally got guidance from the water in just the way that it was being and its quality. And water is one of my biggest mentors.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think to kind of jump on the back of what you were saying, it's like this brain is so complex.
mm,
And when we are in a negative state, we are our biggest enemy, and the world is the worst place in the world. But when we talk to others, when we read something, when we listen, our
mhm,
brain starts opening up, you
yeah.
know. And a good friend of mine who travels a lot, he's a writer, a photographer, said, "You need to go to Japan." And he would hammer me and hammer me and hammer me about it. And I was like, and then I trust this individual. When I went, I was like sitting, in this national park in the middle of Tokyo. And I was like, oh, yes. So for
Mm,
me, one of the big things is traveling, because I think I get out into nature.
yeah.
I'm getting up early in the morning. I'm walking around. I'm not, and again, for us in the Midwest, there's a lot of people in the Midwest here. It can be
Uh,
really hard. Like right now, it's what, 4:40. It's completely dark outside. And
yeah.
but like getting out early, getting into nature, understanding, oh, like I'm just like a little speck in this whole thing. Like my issues are not that big. They are
Mm,
to me if I'm going to just stay focused in my experience. But like when you interact with others, they break your brain open to all these things that you never even thought were possible for you. So the
mm,
idea that like a mentor could be a book, could be a thing, it could be a place. I really feel connected to that idea. Um, like for me and those watching, I know a few of them will know is like I was an Irish dancer growing up. Ireland has a different hold on my heart than any
mm,
other place ever has. And when I'm there, I have such a different type of awareness about my life and the ripple effect that it's had.
mm,
And it's interesting that, getting away to a place does that for you, but like sometimes we need to get out of our environment, um,
yeah.
because it can be so comfortable, but also when you are comfortable, you can be so handcuffed into
Mm,
that instead of breaking out, freeing yourself to say, okay, what's now? Because there's always a lesson, there's always an experience,
yeah.
that is next if you allow yourself it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I hear you saying is just sometimes you got to get out of yourself, get out of your own way, get out of your routine. Um, that is one of the many reasons why I got into this work. The first time I really experienced therapy where, it there was a person sitting across from me whose only agenda was to help me.
Yeah.
And they weren't trying to, um, it had nothing to do with them. But the one thing that it did have to do with them is that they were not my experience at all. And because they were completely objective, you know, whatever the question was or the different techniques that different therapists use, but ultimately it's kind of like vetting. It's like, is that thought really true that you've been thinking about yourself? is that decision that you've made? Do you know for sure 100% that's the best decision that you can make? Is it true that that person really hates your guts? You know that for 100%.
And
I'm thinking of,
even if they do hate your guts,
yeah,
we really know it's because they hate their own guts, right?
yeah, yeah,
And
right.
it could be the outward social experience of, oh, those people don't talk anymore. They hate each other. But to
Yeah,
say, well, no, like this is a person who is really at war with themselves. I am the man. Our relationship loss is the manifestation of their own life. But
yeah,
that makes it so much easier to then not blame oneself
mm,
because everybody's issues, I think a lot of times is just themselves. And that's okay.
yeah,
That's why this
yeah,
work is so important because life's work needs to be around healing from these eternal wounds that we were born with, depending on where you're from, who your parents were. Did you grow up in a society that had, clean water or not? Like we are
hmm,
all born with these things. And I think the journey is to, as much as we can, heal ourselves. Because once we can somewhat heal, we can then start healing those around us and the world around us in a place that, really, really is craving healing. Think what
yeah,
like as I talk to people after the pandemic, like, yes, there is a mental health um epidemic going all over the world right now and everybody wants this healing.
hmm,
And once we can just take one step forward for ourselves, we can bring everybody else with us. And
yeah,
I really think like that's what my life is about. And it's not about being a basketball agent. It's not about being a realtor. It's really about um, as much as I can have self-awareness around, whoa, like I'm messed up, I'm broken, and that's okay. And I can
mm,
work towards healing, and then hopefully be an inspiration for others to heal. So then they
yeah,
can be an inspiration to others and multiply that instead of being so caught up in one's own experience. Um,
mm,
and sometimes people get really lucky, their their spouses don't leave them even though they should, or their father dies when he's 90, or
right,
that's why I think this whole idea of the midlife crisis is really interesting because something tragically was happening at somebody's life and then the crisis happened. um,
mm,
I think crises are happening earlier in people's lives compared to like my mom's generation, who's a boomer, who's 75. And that's why
right,
this is so important because um, it's happening more consistently, more frequently at a younger age. It's not, oh, I'm having a midlife crisis. Now I'm gonna go buy a red Corvette. It's wait, I'm 31 years old for some people. I'm not, but I'm 31 years old. I did every single thing I was supposed to do and I'm still feeling unquenched. I still want more. And like, that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing, even
mm,
though we tend to perceive it as a bad thing.
right. I feel compelled to ask this because and you talk about like mental health challenges or a crisis or a mental health, you know, pandemic. In particular, as a man, because I think I'll just own what my own experience has been. Most of the conversations that I have like this are with women, not with men.
100%.
And there's nothing wrong with that, no shame in the game, but there's a different level of the way um, I watch my wife with her sister and her girlfriends. Like there's a way that they talk about life with one another and share with one another. Ultimately, they're not 100% perfect, but they're much more vulnerable, I think, with one another. Like what do you think men need to hear or better yet learn, right? Like we are taught by the examples of either the family members or the kids we grew up with or the folks that we're hanging with right now. Um, what do you I always play with this idea that so much of the work that we say, oh, it's this a soft skill of like learning about yourself. But I'm like, it's a hard skill. Like it's hard in that it's not easy. And then two, it is like the thing that I believe impacts the entirety of our living, not just like work or our physical strength, but like to have that self-awareness and to be in relationship with ourselves and to be having conversations with mentors or whomever it may be. But no one's schooled on that, right? It's like there wasn't a class in undergrad or there wasn't a class senior year in high school that was like, all right, this is what you need to do, especially dudes. This is what you need to learn and about yourself. What do you think? Like, if you could sit down with um, the generation coming up behind you, just 10 years away, and you're like, this is the thing that needs to be known and understood, in particular by men, to not solve a mental health crisis, but to give people tools to deal with, to your point, the inevitable traumas that are going to happen. What is it that you think that men need to understand better?
That's a really uh, great question and just a very interesting topic to dive into. I think we, especially in America, we were born into this male-dominated society, and we were told that there were certain things you had to do to be a man, you know? And I think one of them was deal with it, shut up, move on, boys don't cry, like those types of things, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And if you did, what certain social things you would be thrown into if you were going to cry in front of your friends, right? Like the embarrassment or whatever it is. I think if it's to the generation behind me, it's you don't need to do this all yourself and you have to ask for help.
yeah.
I also, love the quote or the idea of like, oh, like see a successful man, look at all the women that are like he's standing on their shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
underneath him, behind him, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and women, and I was raised in a very female dominated household where my grandmothers were the bosses and my mom was the boss. And like, if anything, my sister was above my dad in terms of who was in charge.
Mm,
But, sometimes in my experience was, when I went to my dad for something, he'd be like, you should go and talk to your mother. And like, I am so lucky because I had somebody like that. Because especially in work, I have like a very feminine energy, I think, of more of like educating and empowering than like telling you
mm,
what you need to do.
mm,
Um, but I think a man feels no one will understand me
mm,
and I need to do this on my own. Like I'm gonna, carry everybody. I'm gonna work for, 35 years and I'm gonna provide. And, you know, but then, with that, especially with men, it's like, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, all these things that you take on in
mhm.
hopes of, oh, I'm just going to get the family there. But, that's probably why we die when we're younger than our female counterparts,
Right.
and so I don't really know what to say to the younger generation except for like ask for help and try to understand that like it is really the women, even though we have been told it's the men, it is really the women who have a different understanding of leadership. That if you can
Mm,
find one or two good females in your life, be it your aunt, your sister, your daughter, your wife, your mother, if you can listen to them
mm,
and follow them a little bit more consistently, life will be a lot easier because, we think 100 years ago, the women never went to work. It was the men,
Right.
like that is outdated and that is not healthy. It's like
Mhm.
I wonder if my grandfathers didn't feel like they had to be the primary breadwinners because that's what society told them that they had to
Mhm.
do, that they wouldn't have died when they were 58 and 64.
Right.
know? And their wives lasted to like 84 and 100,
Wow.
and it's like society, it's the world we live in, and it's so exhausting. And to just say, can I just ask for help and lean on these women or this woman? Because like if you do, your life gets a lot easier.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, like I also don't know how to answer that question.
I think you just did really well. I mean, in terms of a generalization, I do think it's still quite prevalent um, in I can only speak to the U.S., but I'm assuming it's happening around the world as well. In U.S. male culture, that it is frowned upon. It is a sign of weakness if you ask for help. I know
Mhm.
it's something in whatever the cultural tradition that we've grown up in, either adds to that or takes away from it. But regardless, I think there is a common um, experience for most men in the US that they've grown up with a message, whether it was conscious or unconscious, pointed to them saying, you know, don't be a punk and don't ask for help. Figure it out and do it. And I struggle with that a lot. I mean, I'm an only child too, so on top of that, it was just always me, um, and I am constantly leaning into my wife, man. I mean, she's a powerhouse on so many levels, and I mean, we care for one another. Obviously, we have things that we can contribute, but well, yeah, I think that is any man listening to this, whether you're 20 something or you're 60 something, it's never too late to ask for help um, in any area of your life. And it might be a fellow brother or it might be a sister, like it doesn't matter. Asking for help is the thing. So I
And
will.
I know that about you, about your wife, like from watching you socially on, social media and understanding who you are. And it's like you are a better human because of her. You are so much more successful because of her. Um, you are so much more awakened because of her.
Mhm.
And like if she was not there, this podcast probably wouldn't even be being recorded, right? And as a man, you can find one woman, be it a relative, a friend, whoever it is, and to know like how blessed you are to have that person in your life.
Mhm.
um, and they can help you understand that you don't need to do it all, because if you try to do it, like you will burn out, no doubt. And you're just going to make it harder on oneself. And like I said, like I'm so blessed and so lucky to have this like sister in my life who brings me along on certain things, like
Mhm.
my mental health, like my physical health. um I understand that not everybody listening to this will have an easy, accessible, um person to go to, but like if us as men can seek out women as mentors,
Right.
it'd be so much easier. Like um, Randy McGee, who is one of the best realtors in Chicago, probably one of the best realtors in the country, is a 78-year-old female, totally different than
Mhm.
me. And like I sought her out as a mentor. And my
Mhm.
life is so much better now. And when I have issues with work, I go to her and I'm like, it's not that bad, because she's like, you know, and this is what happened here. And I'm like, oh, it's easier to carry my load because of that. But like, did I have to reach out to her? Right? Did I have to write her a letter and say, it was so great meeting with you. I would like to continue to have a friendship. Do I reach out to have lunch? Yes. And, last week she just said, kid, I am so grateful to have you in my life. You have,
Mm,
whatever, blah, 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 blah. And for me, it's like, I reached out to her to better my life. And then now I'm realizing her life is so much better. So to take
yeah,
it back to the mentorship, the mentor, the mentee, like I think that is so, so important in any facet of one's life.
absolutely. Absolutely. So kind of a closing question. Um, to use your practice that you mentioned earlier, the thing that you try to do every day. What are you looking forward to right now? What's on the horizon, whether it's personally or professionally? Like we're recording this at the end of 2024. It won't air until the until January. So is there something in the new year that you're looking forward to? Something in the holidays? Like what's on the front burner, as I always like to say. I use cooking analogies a lot.
Yeah. I am going to Ireland and Italy for Christmas and New Year's with my mom and my sister. I'm really, really looking forward to that. Um,
Nice.
and then I think personally slash professionally, I'm looking to not um, being so emotionally triggered when
Mm,
something happens outside of me that has a direct impact on me, right? Dealing with a client, something not going my way. I would like to, and I think you've talked about it's like stimulus and response. It's like
hmm.
something happens to not feel like I have to defend myself, to not feel like I have to feel a certain type of way, to just say, hmm, okay, this is happening and I have awareness around this is happening, but how do I want to react instead of defending myself, which people
Yeah.
know that's who I am, or get emotionally upset because somebody doesn't want me in their life or whatever it may be, to really have mindful present time awareness of, okay, I can fall into that, but let me regain for myself my own power to say what it is that I really want. Like, is it that
Mm,
I want to be heard, that I want to be seen, that I want to be loved, that I want to be liked, and to not get so charged up when things don't go the way that I want, and to come back to say, okay, I have an option. Do I want to go this way or this way? Instead of, for me, my whole life, I kind of just went this way. Uh, so I guess more, self-awareness around my reactions and then the story that I tell myself around those things.
mm. Right on. Well, I wish
What,
you an
wait, I got to
awesome.
ask you, what about you though? Like
Oh
it's
yeah,
2 weeks before Christmas. What are you looking forward to? Like holidays and the new year?
yeah. In the new year, I'm looking forward to this. I mean, I am really have an intention of moving the needle of just the span of work that I do. And I don't know what it's all going to look like. I don't know the path to get to all of that, but I'm in a space of excitement of of the journey, which is always, I think, a great space to be in. So it's just feeling fresh as opposed to, maybe if you had talked to me a month or two ago, it didn't feel fresh. So I'm really excited about that. And in terms of travel, because I love to travel as well, a good buddy of mine is turning 60, and for his birthday, a big group of us are going to Mexico. So being in the Midwest with you, and it's, completely dark out right now, and this is a rare day where it's close to 50. It's going to be getting much colder. I'm looking forward to traveling somewhere where I can wear flip flops
Hmm. Yeah,
in a few
sounds
weeks.
nice.
Yeah, it'll be good. It will be good. Well, thank you, my friend. I know that there's all sorts of tidbits and good things for, regardless of your gender, ask for help, but especially men. To me, that's a big takeaway, a message that I want to bring to the brothers in the circle of Soul Gym. Ask for help, and not weakness. It's actually, I think, a sign of strength. So flex that muscle, to use a gym term, as best as possible. Ed, thank you so much. This was a joy. I hope you had fun. I had a lot of fun, and I look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the Soul Gym podcast. I hope that something in here spoke to your mind, to your body, and your spirit today. If you're interested in exploring ways to get one-on-one support, attend classes, or other workshops and events, please go to revdaryljones.com. Peace and blessings to you.